Some self-professed scholar challenged me to explain the difference between Marxism, communism, socialism, and to explain what capitalism is. He assumed that I couldn't do it. And he pointed out that I mispronounced the name of his hero, Herbert Marcuse. I know how to say the man's name. I don't wish to pronounce the man's name as you prefer. I wish to pronounce it as I prefer. How about we call him Herbert Refuse? How about we call him Herbert the Pervert? How about that? Herbie the Perv found refuge in the United States when another brand of his same socialists took over Germany in the 1930s. Herbie's heartfelt desire was to overthrow capitalism. He assumed that he could rouse up the exploited workers to revolt against the business owners. To his dismay, he found that the workers in the United States were fairly content. So he sought a substitute. He actually sought every substitute he could possibly imagine, and created the sexual revolution, the feminist revolution, the anti-war movement, supposedly addressing the issue of poverty and racism. He and his cronies created the Students for a Democratic Society, the American Civil Liberties Union, the Black Panthers. Herbie the Pervert, the sack of refuse, or I guess I should pronounce it Refuse, because you pronounce his name Marcuse. Herbert the Pervert, the sack of refuse, created the sleepers, the sleeper agents in the United States of America who flooded the media after the 1960s, who became what Rush Limbaugh calls the drive-by media. They are the perverted offspring of Herbert the Pervert. Herbert the Pervert became known as the father of the anti-war movement. Yes, I know who he is. And his movement was described by Carl Oglesby as a movement that grew like a weed. Something else that grows like a weed is a plague. Like a virus unleashed on the internet. You don't have to spend a nickel on it. It grows and grows like a weed. It spreads like the plague. It's a psychological virus which turns the victims of this plague into perpetrators of the plague. Until, theoretically, unless something stops it, unless the host becomes immune, develops immunity, learns how to resist this plague, the plague will overwhelm and destroy the host. In this case, the United States. I don't want to read Mar-KOO-say. I don't want to delve into Marcuse-say's private perversions. I only wanted an overview. I wanted to glance him over. That's what I did. That's all I care to do. I wanted to glance him over and give others a heads up. That's what I did. That's all I care to do. You spend your days studying Herbert Marcuse. I will spend my days finding ways to stop him. Wrong Marcuse may often be, but never dead wrong. His revolutionary broadsides have always been too delightfully apocalyptic to be anything but explosively alive. It is Marcuse-say's very vivacity that renders his outlandish dialectic so palatable. In brief, the philosopher sees history as an endless confrontation between reason and imposed ignorance. To hear Marcuse tell it, reasonable men would automatically agree on everything from equal distribution of wealth to bisexual orgies if it weren't for the professor's version of the blue meanies. The blue meanies. Blue meanies. Blue meanies. The blue meanies. Fat cat power elitists who've been hoarding everything for themselves since the Stone Age. That's what the blue meanies are. The ruling class, Marcuse insists, will resort to anything to preserve its privileged position, from the artificial creation of pointless wars and weapons to the maintenance of a sterile morality, to a massive bread and circuses campaign designed to numb you into bliss with new cars, football, and moon landings. It all adds up to a grim view of the future, with the blue meanies manipulating aggression and domination with cybernetic efficiency, while the rest of us smoke more and enjoy it less. The hope is for the victory of reason through a student-worker revolution that will be, in the words of Marcuse-say's students, just as violent as the violence it combats. Meanwhile, back in the dining room, Herbert Marcuse and President Wolford were finishing their dinner. It never for a moment occurred to Wolford that his Kennedy ideology or his recent authoritarian directives to the student body on student power and drug use were in direct conflict with Marcuse-say's rhetoric. The important thing was that Marcuse was a big name, and that meant prestige for the fledgling old Westbury addition to the State University of New York, Nelson Rockefeller's pyramids to learning. "I think your fans are just about ready for you," Mrs. Wolford informed Marcuse. "Ja, tell them I'm coming in a minute." Fans, what the hell was he anyway, a visiting scholar or a touring rock star? Yet fans they were, as crass in their adoration as the crowd cheering Johnny Winter that night at the Fillmore East. I'm sorry, I don't know who Johnny Winter is, and I imagine you don't know either. But we're reading from an article that appeared in Playboy magazine in 1970 about Herbert Marcuse. And I thought I would, not to promote Playboy magazine, but to point out that a very dry, boring, dull subject can be presented in such a way as that it is as to be more accessible to the man on the street. And that's what I am, man on the street. I'm not a scholar. Never want to be. I'm curious. So I glance here and glance there, trying to pick up information. You know, my attention span is short. I like articles well written, and articles that have cartoons, and I see that we have a cartoon here. I'm going to enlarge the screen. It's by Cochrane,